Today I'm going to show you how I deal with a common problem that many people have. A branch falls into their backyard in the winter time. What I'm going to do with my branch is I'm going to cut it into lots of little pieces to make it more manageable. I'm going to turn it into firewood. So what I did in this case was I took the branch and I made a snow pile and I put it on top of the snow pile. And I'm going to use a reciprocating saw to cut through the branch. I'm also using a pruning blade. The idea is that the saw blade slices through the branch and then it slices through the snow and it does not hit the ground. So the pile of snow in effect acts like a sawhorse and it gets your branch off the ground and makes it much easier to cut. In this case I'm using the reciprocating saw and I'm rocking it back and forth. You don't have to do this, but sometimes it helps to cut through the branch. When you're cutting your branch, make sure that if you cut it, it doesn't fall on you and hurt you. Basically, be aware of gravity and what will happen. So now I move the piece of wood onto the snow pile and I'm going to make the next cut. This is the reciprocating saw and you can see this is a pruning blade and it has big teeth on it. You don't have to use a pruning blade. You can use whatever saw blade you have, but usually blades with big teeth work better for this type of work because they remove more material. A fine cut isn't really that important. You want fast cut, something that cuts through the wood quickly. So the reciprocating saw is having no trouble doing this. Reciprocating saws are sometimes nicer or they're easier to use than a chainsaw because they're less dangerous and you don't have a chain that's racing around the tool. You just have this blade that's moving back and forth a little bit. So it can be much less dangerous than a chainsaw if you're not that experienced. So there is a reciprocating saw and you can actually make very accurate cuts with it. It's lightweight and you can make real good cuts, and you just keep the saw moving and keep the saw cutting, and eventually you'll get through the piece of wood and you'll finish your project. Just keep at it and keep cutting up the tree branch, and it might be slower than if you had a chainsaw, but you'll get through it. And in this case I'm using a long blade, and if you use the blade near the tip it's less likely to bounce back and forth. I keep my feet far away from the blade just to be safe. I keep them more than a blade's distance away. You can have a flexible blade or you can have a stiffer blade, whatever you choose. They both have advantages. There is the piece of wood. See, I cut through. Flexible blade is kind of like a fillet knife, and a stiff blade is sometimes also very useful. So this is what I'm doing with this branch. I'm basically just cutting it into little pieces. Take the big problem and cut it into little pieces, and then it's much more manageable and your yard will be clean pretty soon. And it doesn't take any gas. In this case I use a long power cord, and mine's not a battery operated reciprocating saw. Both of them have advantages. The corded version never runs out of battery, and the battery version is good because you don't need a cord, so you can take your pick. See, I'm keeping my feet far away from the blade, and I just keep cutting the piece of wood. You can cut through softwood, hardwood like this. If you keep cutting at these branches for long enough, you'll get the job done and you'll clean up your yard. The saw can usually handle something that's a little narrower diameter than the blade, so your branch that you're cutting should be a little bit narrower diameter than the blade at maximum. But the reciprocating saws can be very useful. They're small, they're compact, and you can clean up tree branches with them no problem, and they're often not that expensive. and they take less skill to use than a chainsaw, and they're much less dangerous. If you mess up with a chainsaw, you can have a big problem. You can do a lot of damage. A reciprocating saw is relatively safer. This branch has been cut to pieces, and I can either use it as firewood or transport it somewhere in my car. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and have a great day.